Run downhill.
All stay in charge of the so what else?
Well, good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much. Yeah, super good to see you. It's very good to see you. Yeah, well, no, I'm actually heading out to. Yeah, but. So you with Chicago that you're driving? No, flying. Yeah, so since I was in Chicago, it's kind of short flights to St. Louis. So you flew from Chicago to here, right? Yeah, and then headed out to LA, and then after that, headed up to Seattle. I was there 2 weeks ago. You were? I just visited the couple of friends, and I went there for the first time. It was very interesting. Yeah. I mean, it was like foggy and rainy. So I didn't enjoy as much as I summer. Yeah, this was my friend. Yeah. Yeah, we changed it all. Just looking great. We're all turning gray. Where's Isabel and Olivia? And Ebony. Oh, right. I did know that. You did tell me. Yeah, Benton was definitely unfortunately. The meeting is good. 9 minutes long. Yeah. Before starting the area, it's an hour. So she wants me to text her. That one is about longer. When it's about to be. When it's about to be destroyed. Okay, sure. So I have I bought a boat. Yeah, you told me that. So next time we need to come out, you could invite your friends to take the boat out. Actually, I think you will enjoy both of them. They are on board in Seattle. On the Libertarian side. Okay. Maybe we can go one of them. I'm sure you will great conversation. Okay, excellent. Very intellectual. Okay. So I'm sure we'll enjoy it. Okay, very good. Yeah, we're going to have a normal meeting and live streaming here. We can see whatever we want to do. Yeah, sure. And it's going to take some time before I take my series. Okay. I was thinking, was it hard? 2 years ago in our for the first time. I thought it was 2 people, but I was running against the second gentleman. On the right? On the right.
Okay, I will call this meeting to order.
I just want to say hi. How are you?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the city clerk please take roll call?
Alderman Breen.
Here.
Alderman Wallach.
Here.
Alderman Scattered. Here. Alderman Charbonneau.
Here.
Alderman Navy. Here. Alderman Miguel. Here. Alderman Anderson.
Here.
Alderman Kennedy.
Here.
All 8 are present and present for.
Thank you. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the resolution 17-11 for the appointment of Jason A. Denny as the new municipal judge for the municipal division of the city of Crestwood. Mr. Denny was one of 8 individuals who applied for the job and overwhelmingly was selected by myself and the city staff as the most qualified. Mr. Denny, if you'd like to step to the podium, just give us your name and address for the record.
Thank you, sir. Jason Denny, 9211 Queenston Drive.
Okay. Any members of the board have any questions for Mr. Denny? I see no lights. Do you have anything you'd like to say to us, sir?
I would just like to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity, as well as for the board for this opportunity to serve the city in this capacity. It's a privilege and an honor to serve the city and its residents as its new judge.
Great, thank you. And just for the public's benefit, Mr. Denny is a prosecutor with St. Louis County. And several of the recommendations that we received as a result of his application came from some very high places within the county, like Mr. McCullough's office. Bob McCullough himself endorsed Mr. Denny, the director of the major case squad, director of the circuit courts for St. Louis County. So those were all very polished individuals with great reputations, and certainly gave us a good amount of confidence in you. No. Yeah. Well, yeah, Judge Newsham, I think, if you hadn't heard, got appointed to be a circuit judge in St. Louis County, something we've been seeking for some time, and we hated to lose John, but certainly we're thrilled that he's received that appointment, and not sure what kind of cases he's going to be hearing, but I know he'll do very well at that. He's also always brought a lot of respect to our municipal court here. I hear a lot of good things about John and about our court system from other mayors throughout the county. So again, we hated to lose John, but I think we've got a great replacement for him, and moving forward, hope that Mr. Denny will be able to serve for many years until maybe he takes a circuit judge's position, and then we'll have to replace him. So, okay. Let me just read part of this resolution, and then I'll ask for a motion in a second. Resolution appointing Jason A. Denny as a municipal judge for the municipal division of the city of Crestwood. Whereas the city of Crestwood has established a municipal court for the adjudication of municipal ordinance violations as a division of the Circuit Court of St. Louis County. And whereas the city's municipal judge, John Newsham, has been appointed by the governor of Missouri as an associate circuit judge and will be required to resign as Crestwood's municipal judge. And whereas section 15-3B, the municipal code of the city of Crestwood, provides that the mayor, with the consent and approval of the Board of Aldermen, shall appoint a municipal judge to serve for a term of 2 years and until his or her successor is appointed and qualified. Whereas the mayor has nominated Jason A. Denny to serve as municipal judge of the Crestwood Municipal Division, and whereas Jason Denny is a member of the Missouri Bar, is at least 21 years of age, is a resident of the city, and meets the qualifications established by Missouri law to serve as municipal judge of the Crestwood Municipal Division. And whereas the Board of Aldermen finds that it would be in the best interest of the city to appoint Jason Denny as municipal judge of the Crestwood Municipal Division, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the city of Crestwood, Missouri as follows. The Board of Aldermen hereby consents and approves of the appointment of Jason A. Denny as municipal judge of the Crestwood Municipal Division as of the effective date of this resolution. Section 2, the resolution shall take effect and be in full force upon its adoption by the Board of Aldermen, adopted this day, 25th day of April 2018. Do I have a motion and a second for approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Judge Denny, congratulations. Thrilled to have you on board, and you know, if you have any questions, feel free to consult with your constituents and our city attorney.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you're free to leave anytime you like. You may want to take some photos. Sir?
Am I supposed to take the oath now too?
Yes, Teresa will.
The oath is not on the agenda.
Okay. You can meet with her sometime during the week, and she or the city clerk, Helen, will provide you with the oath. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a presentation of for year 2017 and quarter 1 2018 financial results. City attorney or city administrator?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll walk through this presentation, which members of the board should be fairly familiar with at this point. This first presentation is a financial review of the complete fiscal year of 2017, which was ended December 31 of 2017. These numbers are post-audit. The audit results will be presented to the board at the next aldermanic meeting. But now that we have final numbers, we can conduct a review of how 2017 ended up. I'd like to start with a review of what we thought the year might look like. This is the budget that was approved as amended mid-year 2017. We had budgeted revenues of $7.718 million, expenditures at $8.573, which would have resulted in a difference of $854,881. That would have reduced our available fund balance from roughly $4.7 million to $3.8 million at year-end 2017. We actually ended up with revenues of $8.7 million and expenditures just over $8 million. So we took a potential deficit of $854,000, but ended up with a positive surplus of $616,000, bringing our fund balance from $4.7 to $5.3 million. And this just shows a breakdown comparing those two budget and actual numbers, as well as the dollar difference and percent difference. So you can see the change in, the anticipated change in fund balance is driven by two things: revenues that came in greater than expected and expenditures that came in lower than expected. Now, expenditures coming in under budget is not terribly unusual. We do have turnover throughout the year in employee positions that results in a short period of time where certain expenditures of salaries and associated benefit costs do not get spent because we haven't filled the position yet. We also obviously budget for certain expenses, and we think what, for instance, asphalt might cost 12, 15 months in advance, but then the price changes and perhaps it's lower than what we thought, or we find out we needed less. So that and just general careful budget management resulted in a expenditure budget that was 5.6% less than budgeted. Revenues came in above budget, and my next slide goes into the reasons why. First, we had, obviously, most significantly, the approval of Proposition C by Crestwood voters last year. That generated $1.06 million in new revenues and is the largest reason for the increase in revenues above what was budgeted preliminarily for 2017. We also collected a full year of use tax. 2016, it was approved by voters, and we only collected for a partial year because it was approved in April of that year. So collections for 2016 were about half of the year. 2017, we had the use tax in for a full year, and so we collected $95,000 more than we did in 2016. We also switched banks and started investing our available fund balance, and so that changed our investment and interest income from $5,000 and raised it up to $33,000 in 2017. That does not include expenditure savings that we realized from that move, eliminating all of the transaction fees that we experienced, primarily driven by transactions in our parks and recreation operations. On the expenditure side, as I mentioned, we had a good number of turnover and vacancies throughout the year in 2017. All of those combined added up, they do add up. Obviously, legal fees came in under budget, and we had a pretty significant savings in the Public Works Streets Division in overtime costs and salt savings because we did not make our salt purchase last year, and that was planned as part of the anticipated move to a new public works facility, but that saves, $40,000, $50,000 right there. Comparing 2017 general fund revenues to 2016 general fund revenues, the green bar represents 2017 revenues and the white bar represents 2016 revenues for various categories. So you have sales and use taxes at the top, representing still the most significant revenue source for the city. In 2017, we collected just about $3.6 million. You can see that did slightly outperform 2016, but what's notable is we had a full year of use tax, and yet the increase was just $100,000. Aside from the use tax, the rest of our sales taxes are still stagnant or declining. Property taxes, a significant jump again as a result of the approval of Proposition C. We saw a slight decrease in utility taxes, but nothing significant there trend-wise. Same thing with licenses and permits. We're just a shade under $1 million there, and not really a significant change. Intergovernmental revenues, that's your road and bridge or cigarette taxes, not really any significant change. Fines and forfeitures were down considerably from 2016 into 2017. It doesn't represent a major revenue source for us though, and obviously just had a low year. That was primarily due to turnover in the police department, which resulted in less traffic enforcement overall. You can see the very, very minor bump in investment earnings. Again, we're getting down to very insignificant revenue sources. Those last three categories of investment earnings, grants, and then just the other miscellaneous category of revenues. I updated this slide for this year, a historic revenue comparison, because I think it's really interesting to show just how much the city has had to change with the decline of the mall. I have 1996 revenues, which are adjusted for 2017 inflation, and then I have the last 3 years, 2015, 2016, and 2017. And really, you know, all of these are kind of interesting to compare in and among themselves. You can see the shift in 1996 from $674,000 in inflation-adjusted property taxes to $2.1 million in 2017. But that's balanced out by a decrease in 1996 inflation-adjusted sales tax revenues of $6.5 million to 2017's $3.38 million. The bottom line there really is, you know, 1996 and really just throughout the prime time heyday of the mall, this organization was operating in inflation-adjusted dollars on 11.3 million, and today, even after Proposition C, we're still only at 8.4. So we are a very, very different organization in the last 10 years than we had been for our prior 30 years. And I just point that out there as food for thought. I'll go through some of our major revenue sources and just the general historic trend. Here's sales taxes 2011 through 2017. In 2011, we collected $3.42 million. In 2017, we're at $3.38 million, which is just a 1% decrease. Obviously, it kind of, if you look at the whole years there, we generally are floating in that 3.5 range, but no real growth there in our largest revenue source. There's property taxes, which you can see 2011 through 2016, really flat, but 2017 is seeing a jump with the voter-approved property tax increase, a 203% increase, of course, but necessary. Utility taxes continued their steady decline trend as people generally get more efficient with their homes, their appliances. Everything just generally seems to be trending down in the general utility tax collection category. We have a 15% decrease since 2011. Use tax, a new revenue category, not enough to really judge a trend there, but with the partial year collected in 2016 and then the full year collected in 2017, we're interested to see where 2018 collections come out for the full year. Licenses and permits is one of the areas where we are seeing some growth, but it's not a major revenue source for us. Just $730,000 in 2011, $860,000 in 2017. That's 17% growth since 2011. And the main reason for those increases is we have updated a lot of our fee schedules, and that's resulting in improved revenue collections. So overall, when you add in all of the revenue sources for the general fund, this is what the historic trend looks like. We had $7.71 million in 2011, and now we're up to $8.7 in 2017. A 13% increase since 2011, and that's almost entirely primarily due to the property tax increase that was approved by voters last year. This next slide shows where we would have been if we had just applied the pre-existing property tax rate and revenue level, and you can see it would have been a 1% decline since 2011. It would have obviously been a fairly challenging situation for the city, and obviously we are so grateful for the residents' support in making sure that we have the resources necessary to continue operating at the level that we This is an expenditures line. I apologize, it looks so dark on this screen with the projector, but the trend here really is 7.94 million, and then we did try some excessive outsourcing in the 2014-15 years, which they gave a shot for a couple years, but just operationally things really weren't working as we needed them to. A lot of stuff that needed to get done really wasn't able to get done with that kind of experiment that we took in those intervening years. And so now we've returned in 2016 and 2017 to our recent historic norms of floating around that $8 million operating expenditure range. That's just a 2% increase since 2011. And when you overlay revenue and expenditures, you can see how they've interplayed. This excludes Prop S, property taxes, which were sunsetted out. It also excludes any interfund transfers and loan repayments that we had going on, which primarily occurred in the 2011-2012 timeframe. As you can see, we were dealing with a structural deficit for some time. 2011-2012, you saw operating deficits. 2013, about as close to breaking even as you can get. 2014-15, when they attempted to downsize the organization in such a way to make things work, you did have surpluses again. But as we move back away from that, you see 2016 shifting back into that operating deficit position, and then finally 2017 emerging into a good surplus situation. So the city's on much firmer financial footing now, and things look good going into the future. Fortunately, throughout all of the recent history, we were able to preserve and in fact increase general fund balance. This is our rainy day fund, if you will, the savings that underpin the operations of the city. We strive to keep 45% of the operating expenditures in reserve at all times. And for each of these years, we were in excess of that 45% policy. And as you can see, we're steadily but slowly building it over time, providing the city with the necessary capital to handle any sort of emergencies or contingencies that may arise. It's comforting to know that we have this available. When you break down our expenditures by department, public safety, as is typical in most municipalities, takes up the overwhelming lion's share of general fund expenditures. Over 65% of all operating expenditures are for either police or fire. That's 33% for fire, 32% for police, 17% in public works, and 18% in general government. Moving on to the capital improvement fund, this is a review of that budget as it was amended mid-year. As you can see, we had revenues at $3.5 million, budgeted expenditures at $3.7, resulting in a projected deficit of $225,000, taking our fund balance from $1.8 million to $1.57 by the end of 2017. We actually ended up with a surplus of nearly $900,000, again thanks to revenues that were above budget and expenditures that came in under budget. So our fund balance actually changed, it grew from $1.8 million to $2.7 million at year end. And here you can see how those categories all interrelate. We had revenues that were $900,000 better than expected, and expenditures that were $200,000 better than expected. And the primary reasons for that is, on the revenue side, timing of payments from MSD for the new public works facility. MSD is dispersing reimbursements to us in roughly $1,000 chunks, and we received a disbursement from them in December of FY17, which we had originally expected in January of 2018, and that basically explains all of the improvement we saw on the revenue side. On the expenditure, we had certain projects that were just not completed by year-end 2016, and that pretty significantly includes the new public works facility, but other projects that were anticipated as well. We also had some projects come in lower than expected, resulting in unforeseen savings. Here's the capital improvement sales tax trend, which you can see just overall a slow but steady downward trend since 2011. That's down 7% from 1.06 to $990,000. One note on the capital improvement sales tax as a future consideration. This is set to expire on March 31st, 2024. I can't really overstate what the loss of this revenue source would mean to the city. We put about $500,000 every single year into our streets and our sidewalks all around the city. We get about $1 million a year, so half of that goes just into maintaining our streets. The other half we use to buy police vehicles, do improvements at our parks, at our various facilities. We have to replace HVAC units every now and then, and you know, those cost money. We like to make improvements at you know, our park bathrooms and other things of that nature. That's all paid for out of the capital improvement sales tax, and the city would have to make some difficult decisions if we elected not to renew it. So my recommendation is that when the time's right, we make this the city's next major sales tax initiative. Since it's a renewal, it's essentially what they call a no tax increase It's just keeping what's already in place. And my recommendation is we consider that in 2020 or 2021 when we're a few years removed from the Proposition C campaign. In terms of the fund balance history in the capital improvement fund, here's the trend. You can see it's fairly steady 2013 through 2016. 2017 ended up just a little off, and that again is due to the revenue collections that we received from MSD for the new public works facility. But 2018 we're projected to end up right around in the range of our historic norms, at least in recent history. Moving on to the park and stormwater fund budget, which funds most of our operational expenses in running the community center, the aquatic center, and maintaining our parks. We had revenues budgeted at 1.74, expenditures at $2 million, resulting in a deficit of $318,000, which would have depleted our fund balance from $1.01 million to $700,000. We actually performed a little bit better than that. We saw revenues come in higher than budgeted, and expenditures came in lower than budgeted, again, as is typical with an operating budget. We did have some turnover, and certain other expenses came in less than we had thought, and so we ended up with better results than we had projected at budget in 2017. So we ended up the year with a fund balance of $906,000 in the Parks and Stormwater Fund. Here again, you can see the difference. We had revenues $45,000 better than budget, expenditures that were $161,000 less than we had expected to spend. So that improved our outcome by about $206,000. Still ended up with a deficit there, but a significantly smaller one. The sales tax trend, it kind of mirrors all the other sales tax trends in the city. It's been pretty flat, hovering around the $1.2 million range since 2011. Fund balance history, after it built up a little bit there in 2015, 2016, 2017, we have depleted it back down, but still in line with the historic norms, still above our 2013 level, certainly. And certainly a healthy fund balance as it is, although I would not recommend future depletion of the fund balance, given that we have a pretty significant operating element to this fund with all of the staff in Parks and Recreation there, as well as operating a pretty heavy capital investment in the water park. Moving on to the sewer lateral fund, much simpler fund. This is just collecting the revenues from the $28 fee that's paid by Crestwood residents for sewer lateral repairs. We had revenues budgeted at $138,200, expenditures at $135,000 for a surplus of $3,200, with a fund balance estimated to increase from $254,000 to $257,000 at year end. We performed slightly better than that, ending up with a surplus of $4,600 and fund balance ending up the year at $259,000. Again, fairly steady there. You wouldn't expect to see much change since this is just tied to the number of residences within the city of Crestwood, and so it's flat and doing what it needs to do. A healthy fund balance in this fund as well. So you can see the steady increase over the last 4 years. Nothing significant, but certainly just a good fund balance to retain there. I have the Q1 2018 presentation, but are there any questions about 2017 before I move on to that?
The slides you were showing throughout from 2011 to present, those are non-inflation adjusted, correct?
That is correct. Those are not adjusted for inflation.
Okay, so just that one table you had going back to 96, those were the only inflation adjusted numbers?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board on the 2017? I see no further lights. Mr. Simpson?
I'll move on to Q1 2018. We began the year with this is the full year 2018 general fund budget. Budgeted revenues at $9.3 million and expenditures at $9.19, a difference of $138,000, with a projected fund balance moving from $5.34 million to $5.47 million at year end. One of the things I like to point out is obviously we budget assuming we're going to spend 100% of what's appropriated, but as I just demonstrated in the last slide, generally we spend anywhere from 94 to 96% of what's expended. And if you apply that, say, a 5%, I'll call it a savings rate on the expenditures, if we come in 5% below budget, as we have typically done, then that budgeted surplus of $138 increases to something more like $400,000 and $500,000. It's kind of amazing what 5% does to the budget, but for those that are distressed at seeing a fairly sizable surplus from 2017 going to this, that's really the primary explanation there is we don't know who's going to turn over mid-year, and so we have to assume that we're going to be fully staffed year in, year out, and that's just not the reality of any organization. In Q1, we've had solid performance, although it's a fairly expenditure-light quarter, the first quarter in the general fund. You can see revenues are trending slightly ahead of budget at 26% of what we would expect for the whole year. $2.4 million collected and $2.09 expended in Q1 for a positive difference of $346,000. That then changes our audited fund balance at January 2018, $5.31 million, and revised our projection for year end to $5.43. Comparing Q1 2018 to Q1 2017, you can see revenues are significantly higher, $485,000 above Q1 2017. That's due to a couple different factors. First, and most obviously, Proposition C. The property taxes are generally collected at year end and year beginning. And so some of those collections fall into Q1 2018, and at the higher rate, we would see that bump. Obviously, the use tax is there and is performing better than it was in 2017. Excuse me. And then we also have Proposition P revenues that have come in starting last November, but mostly in December, that we did not have in Q1 of 2017. On the expenditure side, just seeing expenditures that are $187,000 higher than Q1 of 2017. This goes into a breakdown of the various revenue and expenditure difference. As I mentioned, we have the property taxes, sales taxes, countywide, the 1 cent sales tax, which is our largest sales tax receipt, is slightly improved thus far in the first quarter, which is encouraging to see, but we'll be watching that trend throughout the year to see if it's sustainable. Utility taxes are doing better than Q1 2017, primarily due to a one-time settlement payment we received in Ameren. And then licenses and permit revenues are doing better than Q1 2017 as well. On the expenditure side, the primary reason for differences there is increases in salaries. The raises that were approved by the board for 2018 are in effect, and so therefore employees are earning more. Most significantly, the Proposition P approved police department raises. For the whole year, we estimate that the total increased personnel spending in the police department is up about $350,000. We did not have the assistant fire chief position filled in Q1 2017. It is now filled. He's sitting right over there. And then the city added a floating firefighter paramedic to cover shifts and help reduce overtime. That position is filled and active, and that was not in place in Q1 2017. So looking at Q1 2018 revenues, this is the breakdown. Sales taxes, as we've historically seen, continue to be the dominant revenue source for the city, followed by property and utility taxes, with the rest not yet coming in terribly significantly. Comparing to 2017, you can see though in all the major categories we have seen improvement. The sales tax growth primarily driven by improved countywide receipts, as well as the new Proposition 3P revenues. Property taxes are up as a result of Prop C, and then utility taxes have made a jump. Although, again, it's worth noting that a significant portion of that utility tax, which is the one-time payment, and we're not seeing improved utilization there. Moving on to the Capital Improvement Fund, we had budgeted revenues at $2.39 million, expenditures at $3.53 for a deficit of $1.14 million. And the main reason for that deficit is we had received the bulk of the revenues for the new Public Works facility in 2017 from MSD, but the bulk of the expenditures happens to fall in 2018 as we finished construction of that facility. So you had a revenue-heavy year last year that resulted in a sizable surplus. This year you're going to have an expenditure-heavy year that's going to result in the deficit to balance it out. And the first quarter we saw revenues at $289,000 with expenditures, again, showing that heavy expense from the new Public Works facility at $750,000 for a deficit of $461,000. You can see revenues as a percent of budget are coming in at 12%, which typically you would think we're a quarter of the way through the year, you'd like to see that closer to 25%. However, we have a large chunk of those Capital Improvement Fund revenues that won't be received until very late this year, which is the Rayburn Park grant. And it's possible we might not receive that until early 2019. It depends on when the Grants Commission issues it. But that's $400,000 of revenue, one solid chunk that won't be received until late in the year, which explains why revenues are going to be trending behind budget throughout the rest of the year until that grant revenue comes in. Expenditures trending behind budget, but again, you know, this isn't really driven by any sort of pattern or regular expense. It's as projects are taken on and completed. But with the audited fund balance at 1/1/2018 of 2.7, we're still projecting to finish the year at 1.56, which compared to the preceding slide, the budget originally projected us to end the fund balance at 2018 at 1.17. So we're still expecting to see growth in the fund balance over the long run. Parks and Stormwater Fund, projecting a small operating deficit here, revenues at 1.7 and expenditures at 1.9 for a deficit of $185,000, with the fund balance ending at about $825,000. Thus far, throughout Q1, we have revenues at $406,000 and expenditures at $274,000 for a surplus of $131,000. Expenditures in the Parks and Stormwater Fund tend to fall most heavily in quarters 2 and 3, which are when we staff up for the Aquatic Center and the Community Center, which explains why expenditures there are trending behind the quarter. Moving on to the Sewer Lateral Fund at last here, we've got revenues budgeted at $138,500, expenditures at $135,000 for a difference of $3,580. And so far, we've got $25,000 in revenues collected, $22,000 in expenses, a difference of $2,642 surplus running there. And again, revenues tend to come in heavy at the first and last part of the year, as that only comes in when people are paying their property taxes. And then expenditures, though, are going to be expended throughout the fiscal year. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Any questions?
Board members? See no lights? Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public hearings, and we have none. So we'll move on to the next item, which is Mayor, Board of Aldermen, and City Administrator reports and/or comments. Mr. Brady?
No report, Your Honor.
Alderman Wallach?
No report, but if you allow me sometime during the resolution honor, I have a statement to say.
Okay. Alderman Statter?
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to let everyone know that we do have a beautification committee meeting coming up on May 1st, which is here at City Hall at 5:30 p.m. and it's in the conference room in the back corner of the building. Also just like to take a moment to say that I'm excited about our 2 new aldermen coming onto the board, but I'm going to miss Alderman Anderson, especially my next door neighbor here, Alderman Wallach, and I wish you both all the best. That's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman Charbonneau?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. No report. I as well would like to wish Alderman Anderson and Alderman Wallach the best of luck in the future, whatever their endeavors may entail, and I really do. It's been an honor to serve with you both. I appreciate your service. I appreciate your due diligence to serve the people of your wards and the hard work that you put in to do that. And I will miss you both, and we'll miss you camaraderie and especially the insights that you both provided. And that is all, Your Honor.
Okay. Alderman Maybe?
Your Honor. This Saturday, April the 28th, at the Afton Elks Lodge, the Crestwood Animal Shelter is having their barbecue from 3 to 7 o'clock. It's one of their major fundraisers. So pulled pork and hamburgers and cheeseburgers and bratwurst and all of that. So try to get out there and support it. I had a white punched earlier, but it wasn't needed to give a speech from Mr. Denny because we breezed that one through and approved at 8-0. But I did want to just briefly say that I haven't gone up against him because I don't do criminal defense, but I've seen Mr. Denny, our new municipal judge, in action in court, and he is a formidable and talented prosecutor, and I think brings with him a reputation for fairness and is respected by not only his colleagues but also his opponents. And I think he's going to do a fantastic job as our next municipal judge. Big shoes to fill with Judge Newsham leaving, but I think he can step up. And speaking of big shoes to fill, I look forward to serving with Alderman Ayuez and Alderman Duncan, but big shoes to fill. It's been a pleasure serving with you, Tim and Daryl. Good luck. That's all I've got.
Alderman Miguel?
Thank you, Your Honor. No report, but I too would like to thank Alderman Wallach and Anderson for their service. Alderman Wallach and I go back quite a ways, and all I can say, Alderman Wallach, is all you got to do is wait 3 years. And I would like to thank Mr. Guilfoyle for the first quarter financial reports that were sent out to us, and especially for his analysis on those reports. It made it very easy to follow Mr. Simpson's presentation this evening. So I do thank you, Mr. Guilfoyle, for that. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Alderman Anderson?
No report. The Planning and Zoning Commission had met this month, and
Okay.
the only other thing I want to say, well, just thank everybody here for your kind words.
Alderman Kennedy?
It always happens. Just a couple comments. Look forward to welcoming Alderman Ayuez and Alderman Duncan to the board. Sad to say goodbye to Alderman Wallach and Alderman Anderson. It's been a privilege serving with both of you these past couple of years, and I know you will continue to, I'm sure, be involved in the city because you can't get enough. There's a couple items on the consent agenda that I'm in favor of. I'm not going to pull, but I think they're kind of worthy of comments. I just wanted to share a couple thoughts. One, in the last year, Alderman maybe made a motion for me not to run anymore on the sidewalks at Crestwood and focus on running in Sunset Hills. And before I came up tonight, I ran in Crestwood 3 miles. A little stressful, but we do have an ordinance today approving removal of some trees as part of the sidewalk repair program. I just want to commend the city for hard work the staff has done in getting the initial bids for removal of the trees out of the tree yards. I think initially we had 183 trees scheduled to be removed. We thought maybe we could get half of them done this year, but based on the low bid, we can remove all of them, and that's fantastic. And hopefully we can achieve the same economy scale with the repairs of the sidewalk program. And then on the sewer lateral, I know that there's an ordinance that's making it actually easier for residents to qualify for the sewer lateral program. It's good to see the city making strides and help making it easier for residents to qualify for that great program. That's it. Thank you.
No mind if I turn my-
Yes, thank you very much.
Mr. Simpson.
Yes, well, and talking about things that are in the works, I know the next major project for the assistant to the city administrator, Sarah Belcher, is the improvements to our AV system in this room. So hopefully we'll be able to fix the downpour on Alderman Miguel's microphone, or on Alderman Kennedy's microphone. I'll just piggyback on what everyone else has said. Alderman Anderson, Alderman Wallach, it's been wonderful working with you guys. I've appreciated your steady and professional guidance, and I think you have a lot to be proud of in terms of what this board has accomplished during both of your tenure, and you know, the city's in better shape for what you've done. And I mean, I know at least among my colleagues, we always like to say, you might not get everything you want done, but you want to leave it better than you found it, and I think we've managed to do that. So congratulations to you both. I wish you all the best in your civilian life. That's all I have. Okay. Oh, so you do have one more. Okay. One more announcement too. May 2nd, for anyone in the audience, interactive workshop for the zoning code update. It's kind of a big deal. This is about where buildings are going to go and what size they can be and what you can and can't do on your property. This is the first opportunity you have to make meaningful input into that process. And the more people come out, the better it's going to be, because we want the zoning code to be something you all are happy with. Otherwise, this is going to be very frustrating next 10 to 20 years. We haven't done an update of the zoning code since 1989. So please, May 2nd, 7 p.m. in this room, please come out and participate and share your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. The attorney?
No report, Your Honor.
A couple things. First of all, we are going to be convening a special commission to work on the wholesale siding issue that residents have been concerned about in Ward 2. And we have basically formed a committee using Mike Ballas, Jim Zavis, Bob Sweeney, and Alderman Statter and Alderman Charbonneau. Two of those, of course, the aldermen are from the 2nd Ward, which is where the issue is, and as well as several of the individuals on the committee. So they will be meeting on May the 9th, and hopefully we can get some resolution on this issue to satisfy the requirements of the residents. Okay, and then the last thing I had was obviously to commend Alderman Anderson and Alderman Wallach for their dedication to their positions as aldermen on this board. Both individuals have served in the highest professional standard and have certainly been cognizant of the issues within their wards and in dealing with the concerns of their citizens. And I think that's what all of us are here for, is to basically serve the community that's elected us, and I give you kudos for having done that. Certainly I'm going to miss serving with Daryl and with Tim, because they've made two really great members of this board. One both having a very deep understanding of the issues that we deal with. So certainly going to miss you and wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Okay, thank you. All right, that will take care of the Mayor's Board of Aldermen and City Administrator reports and or comments. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on anything that is or is not on the agenda may do so at this time. Please keep your comments to 5 minutes if you would. Yes, sir?
Can I come to the mic?
Sure, you need to come to the microphone. And if you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Stiles. I lived in Crestwood for 13 years, 9740 Greenview Drive. My wife's going to take the second part. Our family wanted to come before you tonight in regards to the chicken ordinance. We have been in contact with Public Works and our aldermen since January about raising the number of chickens. Originally, we presented on January 23rd on Wednesday, asking that the number be raised to 8. The current number of 5 does not allow for enough eggs for our family, and with the food sensitivities that we have, it would be best for us to raise our own eggs. We figured out that 8 chickens would allow us to do this based on how many people are in our family and the number of eggs laid per chicken, while also taking into account molting, broodiness, and hot and cold weather. On February 21st, the Public Works Board recommended the number be raised to 9, and then it came back to the Board of Aldermen on March 13th. We were not able to attend this meeting, but I believe some concern was raised by the board about noise, smell of extra chickens. I was told that it was going to go back to the board on Public Works on March 21st to make sure chickens are cared for in a sanitary manner, but the number would be kept at 9, and then it would be voted on today, April 24th. Last week, when my wife followed up, she was told it was no longer on the agenda. There was no clear time when it would be or what it would, or if it would, which was disheartening to us. It may seem silly, but to us, this is important. We are coming before you today to ask permission or exception from the Board of Aldermen for our family to have 8 chickens instead of the current 5. We have talked with both our adjacent neighbors as well as getting written permission from them to have more chickens. Both of them are in full support and would appreciate the same support from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And my wife wanted to.
Would you state your name and the address for the record?
Heather Stiles, 9740 Greenview Drive.
Okay.
I didn't know if it would be beneficial or not. I brought some things that I didn't know if I should give to you guys or not. It's the 2 letters from our neighbors. It's also it's 7 false myths about urban chickens, so it covers a lot of the stuff that people were concerned about. And then also a list of adjacent communities and the number of chickens they allow. So I didn't know if I should give that to you or not.
Well, we've seen all of that, actually, that's been sent to us.
Okay, do you need the letters?
And I think the letters basically should come through the process, through the system.
Okay.
So, you know, if and when you have the opportunity to speak before the Public Works Board, then I would make sure that they get put into the public record there, and then they'll be provided to the alderman when that comes before us again.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Maybe?
Just for the residents' benefit, I didn't want you to think this had totally fallen off the radar. I know you said you didn't attend our last meeting, but it was referred back to the Public Works Committee for more review, and that committee is still looking at it. It's not off anyone's radar. They're just trying to get it right, and I know the people on that board are working hard looking at other cities' codes so they can make the best recommendation to this board. So it's not like it's off in left field. It is being actively worked on, but I'm not sure if Mr. Gill knows when the next Public Works meeting is.
May 16th.
Okay, so the 16th of May, if you wanted to come and talk.
Okay. Alderman Charles, do you have something on this?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I was just going to ask if you would allow Ms. Stiles to actually give that to the clerk so it could be put into the record for this evening's meeting.
Sure. You want to bring the letters forward, ma'am? And whatever other information you want to be present. Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And you may also want to bring copies if you have them to the Public Works Board so they have them as well. All right? Thank you. Okay, anything else, Alderman Sherman? Okay. Anyone else on this side care to speak? See no other hands? Anyone on this side care to speak? I see no hands. Okay. So we will close the public comment session and move on to old business, which there is none. And from there on to approval of the consent agenda. Any members of the board wishing to remove something from the consent agenda should do so at this time. Please light your light and state the item you wish to have removed. Okay? I see no lights, so I'll ask for a motion and a second for a first reading.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Do I have a motion and a second for a second reading?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second from Alderman Wallach, probably his last. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay. Will the city clerk please read the titles twice consecutively?
Approval of the April 10, 2018 regular meeting minutes. Proclamation 1717 honoring Arbor Day, April 27, 2018. Acceptance of the following. Annual reports from the special districts to be entered into the city record. Crestwood Market CID Annual Report 2017. Crestwood Point CID Annual Report 2017. Crestwood Square CID Annual Report 2017. Approval of the following. Appointments for Crestwood Market Community Improvement District. The reappointment of Brett Brody and consistent to additional 4-year terms expiring March 9, 2022. Appointment of Don Gafoy to interim director to serve the remainder of the term expiring March 9, 2020, previously held by Rick Jett. Approval of the appointment of Tina Frank to serve on the city's park board. Approval of the appointment of Marina Luchesic to serve on the city's Economic Development Commission. Resolution 1712, approving findings of facts and conclusions of law regarding the application of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District for approval of a conditional use permit for a sanitary storage facility at 8645 Hardy Lane. An ordinance approving the compensation for Jason A. Denny to serve as municipal judge of the city of Crestwood. An ordinance approving an agreement for exclusive provision of soft drink products with Heartland Coca-Cola Bottling Company and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute same on behalf of the city. An ordinance adopting a revised sewer lateral repair policy for the city of Crestwood, Missouri, and amending section 21-7 of chapter 21 of the municipal code of the city of Crestwood, Missouri, relating to the sewer lateral repair policy within the city. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of concrete material from American Ready Mix Company in the total sum not to exceed $20,000 and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with the same. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of hot mix asphalt from Fred Weber in Jefferson Barracks Division and the total sum not to exceed $14,000 and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with the same. An ordinance approving a contract with Custom Tree Care Inc. for tree removal, stump grinding, and turf restoration services and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with their agreement on behalf of the city. I will read the ordinances for the second time. An ordinance approving the compensation for Jason A. Denny to serve as municipal judge of the city of Crestwood. An ordinance approving an agreement for exclusive provision of soft drink products with Heartland Coca-Cola Bottling Company and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute the same on behalf of the city. An ordinance adopting a revised sewer lateral repair policy for the city of Crestwood, Missouri, and amending section 21-7 of chapter 21 of the municipal code of the city of Crestwood, Missouri, relating to sewer lateral repair policy within the city. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of concrete materials from American Ready Mix Company in the total sum not to exceed $20,000 and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with the same. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of hot mix asphalt from Fred Weber Inc., Jefferson Barracks Division, in the total sum not to exceed $14,000 and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with the same. An ordinance approving a contract with Custom Tree Care Inc. for tree removal, stump grinding, and turf restoration services, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute all necessary documents in connection with said agreement on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Would the city clerk now take a roll call?
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Wallach.
Yes.
Alderman Scattered.
Yes.
Alderman Brady.
Yes.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Yes.
Alderman Miguel.
Yes.
Alderman Maybe.
Yes.
Alderman Kennedy.
Yes.
All 8 yes passes.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on, since there were no items removed from the consent agenda, we'll now move on to new business. The first item on under new business is an ordinance repealing the 2003 IPMC and adopting the 2009 IPMC as the new property maintenance code for the city of Crestwood. And this will be a first reading only, as we have to hold the open for 90 days so that residents and others have the opportunity to review the document. Okay, do we have any questions regarding this? Alderman Anderson?
Thank you, Your Honor. On page 94 of our materials, it would be page 6, I guess, specifically regarding the amendments. There is a chart that talks about minimum area in square feet in terms of occupants of a particular dwelling. Do we have such, is there something in force at this point with regard to the number of occupants compared to square feet? Is there anything on the in our city code regarding that now?
There's not.
Okay. Is there any idea how this would be enforced? I mean, we don't require an occupancy permit. I don't think you would be knocking on doors to measure square footage. I just wonder how we see this playing out in terms of how this would be enforced.
It would be enforced as we became notified of the situation.
Okay.
It's kind of like some of our code enforcement issues are not visible from the street or from the front of a house, but we still get notification from residents in the area, and this would be handled in a similar fashion.
I know this would be very difficult to answer, but do you know of any situations where there would be dwellings that would, or settings where there would be a violation at this time?
Not at this instant.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this really is I think a significant change. Maybe the square footage isn't, I haven't measured my kitchen square footage, but this might be something to look at in the future in terms of. I guess we have to be consistent with the county. Is that right?
That is correct.
And this is what the county ordinance is.
That is correct.
So, anyway, just something to consider. It's, I think it is. It could be a significant change. Thank you.
Alderman Maybe.
I guess just in direct response to Alderman Anderson's remarks, I thought there was a summary somewhere I had read that had the different versions of this International Property Maintenance Code, and you could see what the revisions were year to year. I thought, while they may have been tweaked, the prohibition or the regulations on occupancy, I think they've been there for some time. And we obviously, this isn't like a brand new thing we're adopting. The city has already incorporated the 2003 version of this document by reference, and so I guess we'd have to go back and look exactly. But I thought there were already prohibitions on number of residents in a home. You couldn't have like 50 people living in your house. I mean, as an enforcement issue, yeah, unless your neighbors complain, I guess, you're going to know if you have 50 people in your house. But, with the fact that these are the regulations the county has adopted and to use their problem properties unit, our hands are tied. I do see that we do have a carve out that to the extent that our zoning code conflicts with anything in here that our zoning code controls. So I think that's important. But, and I guess if the city administrator, right now we we don't contract with St. Louis County with their problem properties unit?
That's correct, we do not.
And what is the anticipated involvement with the county, and is there a cost attendant to that?
There is a cost, although it's, I think, relatively minor. So this, aside from just generally being a good government move, updating your property maintenance code, as was stated, we're on the 2003 version. This would put us on 2009, which is not the most recent version, but it's the most recent version that St. Louis County has adopted. And when we were looking at this, we thought it would be advantageous to contract with St. Louis County so that we could take advantage of a unit that they have established called the Problem Properties Unit. This is something that would be helpful when we have instances like a hoarder type situation where the violation is within the home, and our code enforcement right now really is more about exterior issues, things that you can view on the outside or neighbors can see. But if somebody's got newspapers, for instance, all over the place, picture your stereotypical hoarding situation, there's very little we can do unless there's an actual emergency or unless a resident or a person of kin invites us in to address it. The Problem Properties Unit would help us with that and other challenges in code enforcement. They have established a unit that consists of public safety personnel, code enforcement personnel, and they have connections with private sector and social service entities that help with certain troublesome situations. I'll go through some of the services that they offer. They would do physical investigation of property and in-depth records research of the property. They do counseling with problem landlords, on-site warnings to problem tenants. They assist with finding absent landlords. They will help with removal of trash and debris. They assist with prosecution at the local and state levels. They can help with demolition of condemned buildings and coordination of social services and public-private sector resources, orders to vacate, and more. The costs for utilizing the Problem Properties Unit are calculated on an hourly basis at $44 an hour. In our experience, the need for this type of service comes up very rarely, just a few times a year. So I feel confident estimating that annual expenses would be less than $1,000, and really I think it would be, most years it would be below $500 to utilize the PPU. But in order to utilize them, we have to adopt the same version of the property maintenance code as the county, and we have to engage them in an agreement, which will be coming to the board when we conduct the second reading of this ordinance at the first meeting in August after the 90-day review period is passed.
And then my last question to the city administrator, I saw like Richmond Heights and Fenton and several other cities have already adopted these agreements with the county. How prevalent are those agreements? I mean, are they almost universal? Are we one of the last ones not to do it? Is it half and half? Is it?
I don't have the exact matrix that the county provides at hand, but I wouldn't say we're among the last by any means. The county provides a number of different types of services, and we contract with them for a number of different ones that are almost universally adopted. I'd say this is one of the lesser done things. So I think it's fair to say we're ahead of the curve, honestly, because these types of problems are really hard for local municipalities to solve. It's a really, really good service that the county offers here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. See no further lights. So may I ask for a motion and a second for our first reading?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Bill number, please.
17-128.
17-128. Pass that to Alderman McGill, would you please? Alderman McGill, if you do the honors, please.
Thank you, Ronnie. Certainly. Bill number 17-128, introduced by Alderman McGill. An ordinance amending Article 2 of Chapter 7 of the Municipal Code of the City of Crestwood, Missouri, revising sections relating to property maintenance, and adopting the 2009 ICC International Property Maintenance Code with the amendments adopted by St. Louis County.
Roll call.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Yes.
Alderman Kennedy.
Yes.
Alderman Miguel.
Yes.
Alderman Wallach.
Yes.
Alderman Scatter.
Yes.
Alderman Anderson.
Yes.
Alderman Maybe.
Yes.
Alderman Brady.
Yes.
8 yeses, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And as I said, that was a first reading only, so that it can be held over for 90 days for residents and whoever in the community would like to take a look at it. Okay, I'm assuming that'll be located in our city clerk's office.
That's right, it's already available.
Okay, great. Okay, now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of why everybody's here, I think. First, we'll need the certification of the April 3rd election results entered into the city record. City clerk.
On April 18, 2018, the city received the certified results of the April 3rd, 2018 general municipal election. The summary of the results is as follows. Ward 1, Minnie Duncan, 145 votes. Candidate was unopposed. Ward 2, Justin Charbonneau, 172 votes. Candidate was unopposed. Ward 3, Grant Maybe, 354 votes. Bill Boston, 108 votes. Ward 4, Ismay Nayu was 420 votes. Timothy Anderson, 292 votes. A copy of these certified election results will be filed in the permanent records of the city.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item is resolutions honoring the outgoing aldermen for their years of service. And we will start with Alderman Wallach. Sir, did you wish to make a statement?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Just want to make, again, it's been 9 years, and I do have a brief statement to reflect on. It's been an honor and privilege to serve the residents of Ward 1. And thank you to the residents in their trust and their support over the years. I'm proud of the few accomplishments. Again, the Discover Crestwood program that I helped to instrumental in suggesting that program in 2010, 2011. The pushing for the curbs and gutter program to be implemented along with the street repair program. I think that's important. We make sure our infrastructure is strong. At the same time, we do the streets, we also do the curbs and gutters. The passing of Proposition C, again, the city's in a much better financial position. A new public works building. The comprehensive plan that we now have. And again, our police and fire departments for keeping us safe. There's been a few disappointments. Again, the elephant in the room is Crestwood Mall. I was hopeful when I was on board that plan would come to fruition. It's likely not. I know that's one of my life's passions as well, the Crestwood Mall. Unfortunately, all we have to show right now is a mound of dirt, or for that matter, Mount Crestwood. Again, the good thing, the contract with Urban Street ends in 2019. I'm disappointed with Urban Street and the lack of progress. Other disappointments, again, I'll just mention a few. The construction as it relates to the O'Reilly Automotive building. I look at that and I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just disappointed. The other thing too is that one of my residents came forward in the 2016, 2017 for the fence variances. I guess I'm disappointed not jumping on it sooner. But again, I'm hopeful in the near future that there will be an exception for these fence variances that are going to be less costly for our residents in the near future. Again, I can't go without reflecting some of the residents that's come to my life. Donna Faye Clark, recognized them when I campaigned in 2016. I also want to recognize former Alderman Mac McGee. He was basically one of my chairmen when I ran in 2006, and he's a good man. Bill Olson, I don't know if you know this or not. He comes to the board afterwards and thank us, Rich and that goes a long way. And also to Roseanne Shannon. Again, thank you for your kudos as well. I appreciate the friendship. Again, just some words of wisdom to some of our fellow aldermen. Simply just vote with your conscience. Again, one other thing, you just can't please everyone. Just basically please 50% plus one. Again, the other thing, just keep in mind in regards to the public, as far as the parks and stormwater tax. As I learned from Jerome Friedrich, again, he's the mayor basically of Fournier and Hillcrest. He would always say that, again, there's two parts of that tax. There's the parks and stormwater. Make sure we allocate certain funding for those stormwater projects, in essence, really the curb and gutter program. You know, I just want to thank the staff, the city administrator, the department heads, employees of our fine city, as they make our job as aldermen easier. Thank God for the past 13 years of my city's involvement, and wish for the mayor and board success for Crestwood's comeback. Finally, a special appreciation for my wife, Lori. I've been involved in Crestwood since 2005 as a public works chairman, and successful run in 2006, and then the 3 successive terms 2009, 12, and 15. She's been my soundboard on what do you think about a certain ordinance. It gets boring, I can tell you. She said, I don't want to hear it anymore. But she is a good soundboard, and I appreciate the feedback, and couldn't do this job without her. And lastly, again, I want to wish everyone the best. Crestwood is a great place to work, live, and play. And as President Trump would say, let's make Crestwood great again.
This will be a resolution number 1801. Whereas Darrell Wallach was elected to the Board of Aldermen in April 2009 and has served since that time as alderman from the 1st Ward. And whereas he has previously served as president of the board and his service on various boards and commissions throughout the years, including Ways and Means Committee, Planning and Zoning Commission, Sign Commission, Charter Review Commission, Park Board, and the Beautification Committee, is a testament to his abilities and dedication. And whereas the mayor and the Board of Aldermen will miss his knowledge and counsel in administering the affairs of the city, now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and the Board of Aldermen of the city of Crestwood, Missouri, that there will be spread upon its permanent records recognition of the able, intelligent, and conscientious services rendered by Darrell Wallach during his terms as alderman of the 1st Ward, and be it further resolved that the mayor and individual members of the Board of Aldermen thereof do hereby express their thanks and great appreciation to Darrell Wallach and extend to him their heartfelt, sincere, and kindest wishes in all his future endeavors. And be it further resolved that an original copy of this resolution be signed by mayor and presented to Darrell Wallach as a sincere expression of the city's respect and regard. Passed and signed this 24th day of April, 2018. Greg Roby, Mayor. Give a big thanks to Laurie, because Darrell probably would not have run 3 years ago if it hadn't have been for her encouragement. And I'm glad she did, because Darrell has been a true friend, a great individual to bounce things off of as mayor, and always knew I was going to get a very intelligent and professional response back. So he's very loyal, very dedicated, and a very honest individual. So thank you, Darrell.
All right, thank you.
You want to do first and second? Do I have a motion? I have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 1801 honoring Darrell Wallach as he leaves his post as alderman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Thank you, Darrell. Okay, now, Mr. Anderson, if I could have you up front, please, sir.
If I can say just
if you would show, by all means, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to thank the residents of the city, and especially the 4th Ward, for electing me back in 2015. I had run before and lost by 7 votes, and so I thought I'd give it another shot, and was elected. And it's been my great privilege and honor to serve with all of you. We've had a lot of, I think, very important matters that have come before this board in the last 3 years. And I can honestly say that in all our deliberations, I think it's been respectful. It's been mutual, as I say, mutual respect, and I think we've moved the city forward. I'm going to take a little different view, I think, on the small property. You know, we were sitting there with a blighted, decaying buildings. They're gone. I think the pathway's open for the development on that. If we hadn't moved forward in 2015, I don't know where we would be at. Certainly in a much worse position. The city has stabilized its financial position. We've had the report. We're not in a deficit. We're not. The trend is upward, I believe. We've implemented a new comprehensive plan. I didn't have anything to do with this very much, other than I voted for Mr. Simpson to be hired as the city administrator. I think he's done an excellent job. I think the city's in good hands. The staff is excellent. I've enjoyed working with Mr. Gillum, the officers, the fire chief. I couldn't ask for more. And I just hope that I've contributed some small part to the betterment of Crestwood, and I look forward to serving the city in any way I can. So I appreciate these 3 years, and I wish everyone here the best of luck, and certainly continued good fortunes for the city. Thank you.
You know, this is really one of the great honors that the mayor has in this office, and that is to be able to recognize and serve with these individuals who have volunteered, so to speak, their time over a period of years to serve the city. So, without further ado, I will read Resolution 1802. Whereas Timothy Anderson was elected to the Board of Aldermen in April 2015 and has served since that time as Alderman of the 4th Ward. And whereas his service on various boards and commissions throughout the years, including the Ways and Means Committee, Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Business License Review Committee, is a testament to his abilities and dedication. And whereas the mayor and the Board of Aldermen will miss his wisdom and counsel in administering the affairs of the city, now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and the Board of Aldermen of the city of Crestwood, Missouri, that there will be spread upon its permanent records recognition of the able, intelligent, and conscientious services rendered by Timothy Anderson during his term as Alderman of the 4th Ward. And be it further resolved that the mayor and individual members of the Board of Aldermen thereof do hereby express their thanks and great appreciation to Timothy Anderson and extend to him their heartfelt, sincere, and kindest wishes in all his future endeavors. And be it further resolved that an original copy of this resolution be signed by Mayor Roby and presented to Timothy Anderson as a sincere expression of the city's respect and regard, passed and signed this 24th day of April, 2018. Greg Roby, Mayor. I have a motion and a second for Resolution 1802.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Thank you. And I'll say I won't miss Tim at the barbecue this year. He beat me last week, so. Okay. That takes care of the resolutions honoring the outgoing aldermen. And the next item on the agenda is the oath of office for officials elected on April 3rd. May we have the 4 aldermen elected up to the front podium, please. And the city clerk will administer the oath of office. Teresa, why don't you have either two of them move over to the other side, and then you can stand at the corner of the podium with the microphone, and that way the public will be able to hear us. Okay?
I.
Justin Charbonneau.
Do solemnly swear that I possess all of the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of Alderman of the City of Crestwood.
Do solemnly swear that I possess all the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of Alderman of the City of Crestwood.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the State of Missouri.
The Constitution of the State of Missouri.
The provisions of all laws of this state affecting charter cities.
The provisions of all laws of this state affecting charter cities.
And the ordinances of the City of Crestwood, Missouri.
And the ordinances of the City of Crestwood, Missouri.
And that I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of Alderman of the City of Crestwood.
And that I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of Alderman of the City of Crestwood.
If the members of the board, newly elected, and previous aldermen would please take your place on the dais. And I'll just say that we will have your name plates for you at the next meeting. Is Tim Anderson still here, and Gerald? I would just say we'll get those to them if they're still here before we leave. Roseanne, would you tell them to hold off leaving? Tim and Daryl, they need to get them their plaques. Okay. Would the city clerk please take roll call?
Alderman Reed.
Here.
Alderman Duncan. Here. Alderman Statter.
Here.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Here.
Alderman Mabee.
Here.
Alderman Miguel.
Here.
Alderman Ayuas.
Here.
Alderman Kennedy.
Here.
All 8 are present and report.
Okay. Very good, and welcome.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the appointment to boards and commissions. And I think that everyone has received a copy of the appointments. I have had no complaints or concerns regarding that. So with that, I don't think that we need to take a vote on it. Everyone understands who you will be working with, and please contact the department head who's responsible for that particular position, and we will make sure to get you taken care of there. Okay? All right. The next item on the agenda is the selection of board president. Alderman, maybe you have a light on?
I would nominate Alderman Kennedy.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. So we have a nomination of Alderman Kennedy. Is that your motion?
If there's no other nominations, yes.
I don't see any other lights.
Okay. I would move that we select Alderman Kennedy as the president of the board for the next year.
Okay. Do we have a second to that? Yeah, we have a second from Alderman Duncan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Okay. Alderman Kennedy, congratulations. You're board president. great work during the last year and serving as my backup. It's always nice to know that you've got someone of your caliber behind you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. You made it easy on me.
No, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the discussion of the payment management presentation. Alderman Miguel, that was your topic, so I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. We had a presentation on pavement management back in March, and subsequent to that presentation, I obtained a copy of the presentation from Mr. Simpson. I spent some time going through it, and I came up with some observations. And so I'd like to, well, first I'd like to compliment the staff, the city and the staff, on the work that was done in putting this presentation together. Certainly a tremendous amount of work involved, and we saw the results of that. So, in looking over the presentation, the slides there, since that meeting, I had some thoughts, and I'd like to present some alternative net numbers, perhaps, for consideration by the board, and go from there. So I've asked Mr. Simpson if he would show some slides, and I'd like to start off with slide number 26. If Mr. Simpson could bring that up. I don't know how legible the numbers are, but the slide shows a breakdown by type of work plus the total for that particular year. As I looked at that slide, the amount for 2011 caught my attention, and that kind of became my starting point. The amount that slide shows for 2011 is $90,000. I looked at the 2014 budget, page 2-46, for those of you that are following on a computer, and I saw the mill and overlay work for that year. The budgets do have a look back. The 2014 budget has a look back of 3 years, 2010, 11, and 12. The number on the 2014 budget for mill and overlay was $457,000. Now, perhaps there's some rational explanation for that, but I will leave that up to the administration to respond to. Now, on the other hand, on that same budget sheet, there's $440,000 for 2010, and there's $692,000 for 2012, and those match the numbers that are presented on this presentation. So, at a glance, I don't understand the $90,000 and would suggest that perhaps that number needs to be reviewed. Now, I took that a step further because I didn't know whether possibly that $457,000 number was correct. And I looked at the audit for 2011, and the audit for 2011 had a total of, for street work, a total now of $756,862. And if I look at the detail in that, what I previously referred to, that budget for 2014 for the year 2011, bingo, $756,861. Okay, for dollar rounding. So I did the same thing for a couple of other years, and for example, for the year 2013, which referred back to the year 2009 actual, it has 1.2 million. Again, the number on that slide is 377,000. So and again, that 2011 number, excuse me, let me leave it there. The audit report for 2014 has 2.0 million. Again, that's in total. And the number on this presentation is 540,000. So there's some significant differences in numbers. Perhaps there's an explanation. Perhaps the city did not include or subtracted work that was cost of expenditures covered by grants. I really don't know what went into the development of those numbers.
Alderman, just to jump in, we excluded new construction numbers from the historical spend because our intention was to show prior year maintenance spending. So, for instance, the Spellman project, which I believe is probably what you're seeing, let's say in 2014, was not included.
Well, the Spellman, the road was there. It would have required work at some point. And even, and one might argue that we may not have spent as much on the project if we had to fund it ourselves. But still, there was work there that had to be done, and at the very least, the city did cover 20% of the cost. So one might argue somewhere in between there, but I think that for my part, it is street work, it's necessary street work. One might discount the amount a bit, but I think whether we were fortunate enough to get the grant, which might have been $1 million, $1.5 million, that still left $500,000 or so that the city had to come up with. And I'm just guessing there at those numbers. So, and again, well, anyway, those are what I noticed as I reviewed this particular slide. And, you know, there's a lot of numbers here. I can understand that I certainly wasn't expecting perfection. I'm just asking that what I'm presenting be further reviewed or taken under consideration. And perhaps, again, I'm trying to just bring some additional information to the attention of the board and the city. So,
Alderman, if I may, since you're pausing for a moment, Mr. Gillums wanted to get my attention.
Could we hold the questions until I complete my presentation, or?
Sounds good.
Okay. I'd be happy to come back. Page number 27. Just some observations on this particular slide. This slide shows the factors inflation into the cost, and inflation, obviously, not obviously, but mostly, I believe, except for 1 year, there was a positive inflation factor. What I noticed, though, is that at the midpoint, from the years 2001 to 2008, we were at a relatively in a period of relatively high inflation. As when I calculated, I just earned an arithmetic average of 2.4% per year. looking from 2012 to 2017, the inflation factor dropped to 1.5%. Now, I point that out for one reason, because that's really one of the two numbers presented on the heading there. That on an inflation basis, if you look at 17 years, the average spending was $524,000. If you look just at the last 6 years, 2012 to 17, the inflation-adjusted number is $599,000. Again, we've been in a period of low inflation. The Federal Reserve target has been 2% for years, and we just might get to it in view of the easy money that the current administration has come forward with. We're reaching a period of high employment, which may have a tendency to inflate wages. We've had tax breaks, which will wind up putting more dollars into circulation. Again, just some observations there, that inflation may increase as we move forward, back to what it was back in the 90s and 2000. And actually, I think was even higher at that point. Slide number 28, if you would, please. As I looked at this slide, and I realized that we had, when I looked at this slide and checked further, and because we are now on a PACER system versus a PCI system, the change occurred in 2015. In other words, the last PCI reading was in 2012. And in 2015 was the first reading under PACER, the current system. Now, if you look at the peer rating, at the ratings there, if you look at 2003 to 2010, there's 7 years of declining ratings. If you look at the numbers from 2012 to 2015, there's a major increase there of 0.94, almost a full point jump in the numbers. And I guess what I'm wondering is if that is, in fact, I guess it appears to me that the jump from 2012 to 2015 is the result of going to the new system. And the expenditures in that period are pretty much normal. The expenditures all along, this in capital dollars there, are generally pretty much in line. Not a great variation overall from one year to another. It pretty much balances out. Then from 2015 to 2017, there's a steady decline. Well, and 2 years does not make it a trend. But there's a drop from 771 to 752 to 723. And maybe that's just a matter of getting acclimated with the new system. But and there were no readings in 2013 and 14. So that's why I'm kind of saying that from 2012 to 2015, there really were no, that was, even though the numbers are in there, the numbers for 2013 and 14 are the result of interpolation, I guess. Now, the average decrease in that period there from that I first mentioned was 0.16. The average increase from 20 to 12 to 15 was 0.31, and the average decrease from the last 2 years is 0.24. So, again, you know, again, as I look at the numbers, I think there was a result of the system change. I think we need to look closely at what happens within the next year or two, because that 723 may actually, under the old system, be more like 6.5 or 6 3/4. Page 17.
Alderman McKell, can you start to wrap this up? You know, technically you get 10 minutes, you've been at it 15.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, we've all seen this.
All right.
So, you know, I'd appreciate it if you could move it along.
Okay, well then let me turn to two slides that I put together.
Yes, sir.
Actually, forget about page 17. If you would go to the thumb drive, the slide number 1. Okay, slide number 1 are the totals from an attachment that was given to us in an email of March the 20th. The subject was pavement management. The second attachment attached was labeled list of street projects. This is an extract of the totals on that particular slide. As you can, and this may have been a draft to the slides that we were reviewing. I really don't know. At any rate, the numbers aren't all that important, but you'll notice that there's gaps in there. And starting from the bottom, I'll explain those gaps. And Mr. Simpson, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, I filled in those numbers. Starting from the bottom, I took the numbers that were in the presentation that we saw, the first slide that we saw, I inserted those. Then I went up to 2002 through 99 through 2002, which were blank, and I pulled out the inserted numbers from audit reports. So that takes us back to 99. The numbers from 95 to 98 I replaced with the numbers that were in the previous slide, but they varied substantially and in fact were quite a bit different. But I replaced those with numbers from the audit reports. So from 2002 up through 93, those are numbers from the audit reports. So what you have here now is 25 years of numbers. The 25-year average is $689,000, which is a bit higher than the numbers that the staff had accomplished. Now, one may argue, I suppose, that 17 is better than 25, and we should not consider the data from subsequent to 2001, I believe. But we're looking at life expectancies of 50 years, so I would submit that 25 years would be a better representation of cost. And in fact, the numbers for 2001 and 2002 were in agreement with the information that I previously submitted to the board from a result of the previous city administrator. Add 20% for inflation, and that bottom line number comes up, is over $800,000 a year. So again, what I'm suggesting is perhaps I would suggest taking a closer look, and because that's a substantially higher number than was presented a month ago. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Sorry, that's a good report. I think that the only problem that I see is that when you're talking about ratings, and you talked about the differences in the ratings over a period of years, you have to keep in mind that we've had a number of public works directors who have been involved in those. We have also had interns who have over the summers done some of the ratings for us. And I think that the results of those are oftentimes in the eyes of the beholder. You could look at a pavement and say, well, I'll give it a 5, and someone else could look at it and say, well, I think it's a 6 or 6.5. So I think that it's subject to whoever's doing that at the time and the experience of that individual. So
I would agree. There's a lot of subjectivity. It's not an art. It's not a science. It's as much an art as a science. But then I would think that there's probably technology out there like Google that could just drive the streets, and I think perhaps within a few years we'll be seeing a car driving, taking the measurements.
Sure.
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because historical spending was just one facet of the presentation that staff gave, and then I'll turn it over to Jim to make any additional comments you want. But we left that presentation feeling like we should reemphasize this point, so I want to take the opportunity to do so, which is the historical spending was just one lens to look at this. But really, we sought to answer the question, how much should we spend every single year? It's not a function of how much have we spent. That's one way to look at it, but what is the right amount to spend every single year? And really, the best way to look at it is, on an average, how many square feet per year should we be doing? And that's what this slide 30, which we showed at the presentation, illustrated. I'm going to oversimplify the math you're seeing here, but to illustrate, I guess, what we did. Let's assume you're in a hypothetical city with 20 miles of streets, and all 20 miles has a 20-year life expectancy. If you were doing a replacement or maintenance system then for that hypothetical scenario, you would replace 1 mile of street every single year for 20 years in order to maintain those streets in the appropriate condition. 20 miles of streets, 20-year life expectancy, 1 mile per street. This is what we did, just in a more complicated fashion. We took all the different types of our streets, asphalt arterials, asphalt overlaid collector roads, concrete residential collector arterials, etc. We calculated how many square feet we have of each type, the observed life expectancy for each type. So if we have 1.7 million square feet of concrete residential streets with a life expectancy of 51 years, then we know that we need to do 33,441 square feet per year in order to maintain this one category in an appropriate fashion. We then applied the cost per square foot that we have recently observed for the various types. Asphalt overlays, we do $1 per square foot. Concrete, $5.56 to come up with a spend. That's your annual cost on the far right column here. And when you sum all that up, the answer that we came away with is we ought to spend about $590,000 every single year to maintain our roads. Now, it doesn't work out quite that neatly because to achieve economies of scale, we alternate doing asphalt and concrete. We don't mix and match every single year. We do concrete, all concrete 1 year and all asphalt the other year. But in general, you should be looking for a trend that's at about that $590,000 level. And what our research showed is that in the past, our historic spend is generally in line with what that should be. And Alderman Miguel's research, your numbers only show we spend more than that. We were actually doing more than what we needed to do to maintain our streets, which is good news. So that's the one point I wanted to make. Jim, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
I think you summed that up very well.
Okay.
But I did have a comment. Alderman Miguel requested that we do additional research on 2011. And during my research, I had the 2014 budget just like you did and had the same number for 2011. And for the life of me, I could not find the bid tabs anywhere. And then I went up to finance and asked the account clerk to look up the actual expenditures, and that's where she came up with 0. And then I went to the next year in 2012 and 2013, and all of the streets that were budgeted for 11 were done in 12 and 13. So that's how we ended up with 0 in 2011. I know, I was as befuddled as you were about that.
I went to the audit report, and if you stop and think about it, the audit preceded what's in the 2014 budget, which showing the actuals.
I know.
So, I mean, I would think that if anything, the audit would be the gospel.
All I know is I've got the account clerk saying 0 was spent, and then I found those same streets that were supposed to be done in 2011 on the bid tabs for 2012 and 2013. So I feel like the budget was incorrect, and I have found 2 other sources that supported the information that I put on for that year.
And Alderman Miguel, we used to carry over encumbered expenses.
I understand, but
we budgeted in one year, but we didn't get it done until the next. And when Mr. Jett came in, we changed that because the state said that the monies had to be spent in the year in which they were allocated.
Say what you will, the auditors got the numbers from the city. So, and the numbers before and after 2011 are consistent with the spreadsheet here. So how that 477 got moved somewhere else, the other numbers on that sheet are accurately accounted for.
What was the year, Jim, we did the Party Road Bridge?
I don't recall the year for the Party Road Bridge. I can certainly get that information.
I'd like to make a comment on
Yeah, go ahead.
further comment about page 30, which Mr. Simpson pulled up. What you've done here parallels what I did back in February, March, and that's great. You did it in more detail, and that's good also. The difference between what you have here and what I presented back in February or March, whenever it was, or maybe it was December, I forget. The difference is in the life expectancies. Now, I really have no way of knowing what the real life expectancies are. You had some spreadsheets, you had a major spreadsheet there. By year, what was done. Now, the only thing I could do was spot check. And I spot checked Camelot, and Camelot, according to the table, was built in '64. I'm under that could be, that's possible, but I don't think it was constructed until '68. In any event, it was reconstructed in 2002. That's a life of 34 or 38 years, however you want to count. That's in the concrete residential category, which is shown here as 51. That strikes me as extremely high. I'm sure you got that from sampling, but my sampling was Camelot, and the other sampling, which I did this afternoon, was on Ewers. And Ewers was constructed in 1958, and in 1992, residential concrete, in 1992 was down to 54. In 1998, it was down to 30. So after 40 years, that road was at a 30, which is rated very poor. Poor or very poor. The road was reconstructed in 2005. It was a complete reconstruction. So in 1998, after 40 years, that road was a 30. Something I hope we never have to see again, because that road wound up being a complete reconstruction in 2005. The reason I looked at, spot checked yours is because that was the condition of that road when I ran for Alderman the first time. So I really can't speak more than just an example or two, but it strikes me that concrete, you're giving it an average life expectancy here of 50 years in total. I don't see that. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Davey, did you have a comment?
Very briefly. I appreciate the thoroughness of Alderman Miguel and the attention paid to this. Going forward, I'm confident the city will update these spreadsheets on an annual basis, so as the years go by, we'll have a more accurate picture. As for the discrepancies in some of the earlier data, especially the further back we reach where the records are harder to come by, my thought would be, I assume Mr. Gillen and Mr. Simpson, you're willing to meet with Alderman Miguel and go over some of those discrepancies?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and I just think that would probably be, just so we can, get kind of a bottom line presentation, something like this slide or something like the final slide Alderman Miguel put up. That's helpful. I mean, these are important issues. The amount we spend on our streets is of critical importance, but arguing over data points and spreadsheets, I think that's probably best handled going over those discrepancies in the spreadsheets ahead of time. But I appreciate the thoroughness and the analysis. And what was your final number, Mr. Alderman Miguel, that we need to be spending?
Inflation adjusted a little over 800,000.
Okay, so we've got a $200,000 spread until those numbers are further reviewed. So, budgeting wise, I would think we want to be north of the 597 if we could. Okay, but that's all I've got.
All right. Okay, see no further lights. So we will move on to introduction of bills or future issues. Right? You've got the what? Go ahead. It's not on my agenda.
Oh, go ahead. Okay. The city was approached by a company that identifies locations for new cell phone towers, and this said company has expressed an interest in constructing a tower at Whitecliff Park. The city currently has a cell tower at Whitecliff Park. It is semi-disguised as one of the light standards on the softball field with our lights attached to it, and then it has a cell tower at the top. I've got an image that I took from Google Street View on the screen here, but you can see it right here. And that's the softball field, and obviously the Whitecliff parking lot here. So one of our light standards here, and then the cell tower with lights attached there. They would propose to do something similar that would be approximately 20 feet taller. They said they would go up to 100 feet. Since it's under 100 feet tall, it doesn't require a conditional use permit, and this could be approved simply by the Board of Aldermen approving a lease. I do not have a lease agreement for the board to consider tonight, but what I would seek from the board is whether or not you're interested in us fleshing out a lease agreement and whether or not you're satisfied with the financial terms that were proposed by this company. So let me start with the identified location, tentative location of the cell tower. Over here, where I'm circling with my mouse, is the existing cell tower that we have that's built into one of our light standards. And then I circled the area in blue where we currently have another light standard on the softball field. They would replace this light standard with a structure that was about 20 feet taller than the current one and reattach our lights to it. There would be an associated equipment cabinet that would support the tower, and while these details have to be finalized, we propose either that they enclose them and attach them as part of the first base dugout, which you see right here next to the tower, or enclose them in a vinyl or wood fence that would be located closer to the wood line here. Staff is okay with either location from an operational perspective. There's no, it's not really a programmed space back here. It's just woods going back into the adjacent neighborhood. It wouldn't be terribly large. The other tower has an equipment cabinet that's housed as an extension onto the dugout on the third base side. So we would expect that it would be similarly sized, although those details will be specified as part of the lease agreement, of course. So that's generally the location. This is an example of a similar tower they built up in North County. Right now they propose to enclose their cell tower within a 15-foot by 15-foot chain link fence. This right now is in a 50 by 50-foot chain link fence. I'm going to negotiate with them that they remove the fence entirely. The other cell tower that we have at White Cliff is not enclosed in a fence, and I think that they're unsightly, but they may object. It'll be up to the board to decide whether or not that's acceptable. So the terms, they proposed paying rent starting at $1,700 a month, which comes out to $20,400 a year, with a 15% escalator every 5 years. So every 5 years it would jump up by 15%. They did not specify an exact term, but generally these are either for 20 or 30 years. So over 20 years, that means the lease would be worth $509,324. Over 30 years, the lease would be worth $892,881. They've also offered a $5,000 signing bonus that would be payable immediately. For comparison purposes, the city has 2 other cell towers on its property. They have the other cell tower that's at White Cliff. That paid $1,100 a month, or $13,200 a year, with a 15% escalator, which was approved in 2004. The tower that's located here at the Government Center paid $1,500 monthly, which is $18,000 a year, with a 15% escalator, and that was approved 5 years ago. That's actually set to increase to $1,725 per month on November 1st of this year. As I mentioned, the proposed tower would be 100 feet tall. The other cell tower at the softball field is 80 feet tall, so it would be 20 feet taller than the current one, which is a consideration from an aesthetics point of view. And I touched on the other aesthetic considerations, so I guess I just wanted to get a sense from the board as to whether or not you felt that this was attractive to consider adding another tower to our park. If you're interested in hearing more and you find the financial terms meet your approval, then my next step would be to direct the city attorney to negotiate a lease agreement with the company. That's all.
Alderman Stetter.
Thank you. Chris, when they came to you about this, my only concern is, and I don't know the technicality of this, those are very close to each other. And I would assume it's going to be 2 separate providers that would be working on these. Is one being taller than the other? Are we going to have a problem with competing signals causing a problem for the other provider? I'd want at least some assurance that that was not the case.
I would not think so, but yeah, they're aware that we have the other tower at White Cliff and of the location and its relation to it. So certainly if anybody's apprised that there would be any sort of technical issues, I would expect it to be done, but I'll reiterate to them the issue.
I would think the shorter one might be more concerned just because it could be a stronger signal. But yeah, if we could just check, that would be great. Otherwise, I have no problem.
Okay. Alderman Breeding.
Thank you. While we're working on those light standards there, can you see if they could install some sort of timer? I don't think we have one at those lights, and it's kind of a hindrance to doing much outside of normal hours. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, yeah, and the manager of recreation made that recommendation to me at staff meeting this week, that I request that they give us brand new lights with a timer on. I think it's the least they could do.
But how many light standards are there currently?
Well, this would be just the one that they would replace, so we would have to undertake the rest.
Well, I'd be interested to see how much that would cost.
Sure.
Thank you.
Alderman Charbonneau.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I have no problem with this. I do agree. I think that the 15 or the fence barrier should go down. I don't like that. And I also, I think aesthetically it would probably look better if it was kind of anchored to the dugout. I might be able to hide it a little bit better than to outwardly display it, even with a fence that might take up some of the wooded area space that we already have, take some stuff down if we can make it fit in the existing space, I'd be fine with it. So I would support this and be willing to support lease negotiations. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Would they be agreeable to a one-time payment?
I can ask, however, I doubt it. The way these leases generally are structured is that every 5 years it's an option to extend, whether or not they wish to extend it. So a one-time payment would imply that they would automatically take all 20 or 30 years at once, where they probably would prefer the option to retain.
Well, I guess the problem I have is I don't want a 5-year lease and then they're gone and we were stuck with their stinking tower in our premier park. That doesn't make any sense to me. But if they're willing to do a lump sum of $800 and something thousand, that could go towards a new amphitheater in White Cliff Park. I would also insist, as the mayor, that any monies we receive from this be utilized in the park, since that's where the tower is going to be placed. And I think that we can certainly use that money for improvements in White Cliff Park. And then the other thing was, what's the time frame of the installation?
I do not know at this point. Most of the time these companies want to move as fast as they possibly can. But of course, as soon as you sign on the dotted line, then they're going to take their sweet time, I'm sure. Yeah. Well,
that would present a problem in that we've got softball leagues scheduled during the summer and the fall, and if those lights are not going to be in operation and those guys are going to have equipment there working on in the area of the field, you can't hardly have softball games and events there. So I would want some answers to those questions, I think, before I would consider endorsing it. So, Alderman, maybe.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I'm in favor of it. We've probably represented a dozen or more property owners on these leases. And I've found they tend to cluster together. So if you have the luck of the draw where you have an area where the cell phone providers find that towers provide good bang for the buck, you have certain building owners that have 3 different cell companies that all put a tower on the same roof. And it's lucrative if you're a property owner in that situation. So I can't imagine there'll be an issue with 2 that are that far apart, because I've seen them a lot closer. There's certain provisions I think that are going to be pretty non-negotiable, but I found there's usually a little bit of financial flexibility and quite a bit of flexibility on some of the other terms, and I'm pretty confident they would probably put in or we could insist on some removal language that they remove all of their equipment upon lease termination. So I think we move forward with this, but we maximize the revenues we can get from this and make sure the terms are favorable to the city.
I know there's 4 towers, I think, right now at Barrett Station and 141, right there at the intersection. And, they're different heights, obviously, but it pretty well takes up that whole area. So I guess the question is, if we give permission to 1, which we already have, who is that? AT&T?
That was Singular at that point. It's all Singular now.
AT&T. Okay. So AT&T, and then this one is Sprint. And so, if AT&T and then Sprint, then what happens when the next guy comes along and wants to put a tower up there?
We say yes.
I guess we get all our lights. Yeah, we get them all replaced. So, okay. Is that it, Alderman? Maybe?
That's all I have.
Okay. Alderman Kennedy.
Question, are there any perceived aesthetic issues from the neighbors with this cell tower being 20 feet higher? Is that going to be an issue for the neighbors?
I don't know. I haven't driven up to the neighborhood to see what of the current light standard is visible. It may be slightly more visible. It could be a concern.
Well, I think we should look at that. I agree with Mayor Roby that I think there should be a restoration clause in the event they do not renew, that they should do that. Maybe there might be a need for a security deposit to protect us for that restoration clause. Other than that, I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Alderman Ayush?
I would be in favor as well. I agree with most comments made tonight about this project. A couple of things for you. I can see some residents asking us about health concerns. Having 2 towers too close like this, especially when kids are going to play, it's going to be an issue that we should address eventually. if we have those questions. And I do agree with the mayor saying that that money that we're going to receive, we need to use that for the park. I think they will make good use of that money, so I agree with that.
Anything else, sir? Okay. Any other comments? Okay. You see the other lights?
Good, got my direction.
Okay, good.
Thanks, guys.
All right, I don't know why that wasn't on my agenda, but just apologize for that. Okay, the next one is introduction of future bills, and for issues I saw none. Alderman Breeding?
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up on that issue. This for Lisa. The Supreme Court recently heard something about taxing internet sales. When will they come back with that decision? You know? Or have they? This summer?
I was going to say sometime during the summer.
Okay. Well, we're on that in case something
Yes.
good happens there, right? I thought that was great news because if you look at streets every day, you see the UPS trucks, the FedEx trucks, the Amazon trucks coming up and down our streets of Crestwood. I can't tell you how many times, and you know, we're not getting anything for all that. It's only fair that we get some of that. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Sharpwood?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I will most likely be missing the May 22nd meeting, and so I am going to notify the board that I possibly may call in to the meeting if necessary in order to make sure that that is aware. I believe according to procedures I have to let the board know.
And I know Alderman Kennedy's going to be out May the 8th for the first meeting, so as long as we got the forum, we're good. Okay. All right. That takes care of the future issues. How about adjournment? Do I have a motion? I've got a motion. How about a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Evening.